Yeah, welcome back. It's business morning, but it's a special one because I have a full house. I feel kind of intimidated because I've been outnumbered, and the only lady we're supposed to have on the panel, unfortunately, we're not able to get through to her. That is the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Zigma Gas Limited, Mrs. Fumi Ogwe. Hopefully she can join us before the program ends. But right now, it's just me and the men. I wonder if I have the power, but I think I should start with my colleague. I have my colleague joining me on the program today, Olu Philip, our energy correspondent. So, Olu, you might have to be a woman for this period because I can't afford to be the only one.
Have you wondered why it said gentlemen of the press?
I'm not thinking about that now. All right, so we're going to have a conversation, as you would imagine, on the oil and gas sector. And Olu, being the energy correspondent in Channels Television, is here to help us drill down those issues. But for our guests we have here in the studio, we have Mr. Jeremiah Olatide. He's the Chief Executive Officer of petroleumprice.ng.
Thank you so much for having me.
Keeping our eyes or keeping us informed on what happened mostly at the depot. He's been doing that since 2025, and we appreciate the information you keep sharing with us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah, and then someone who will help us put a balance to all of this industry people conversation is an energy analyst, Mr. Labode Showumi. He's also here in the studio. Mr. Showumi, I hope you have your skill to do the balancing.
I brought my bulletproof.
Ha. I don't know about that. Well, joining us from our Abuja studio is an industry player, the National Publicity Secretary of Crude Oil Refinery Owners Association of Nigeria. That's Koran, Mr. Eche Idoko. Mr. Idoko, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Ini. Happy New Year. It's a pleasure to be here.
Happy New Year to you too. And joining us virtually also from the industry, from Imo State this time, Dr. Billy Gillis Harry. We know him, of course, from Petren, the Petroleum Products Retail Outlet Owners Association of Nigeria. Dr. Billy Harris, good morning and welcome to the program. I think you're on mute. I cannot hear you, even though I see your lips moving.
Okay.
All right, yeah, I can hear you now. That's good. Dr. Billy Harris. Okay, I believe we can hear him. I saw him making a move there, and I did hear his voice. So let's start with.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. That's great. So
yeah,
let me start with you,
and
Dr.
thank you
Harris.
for having me. My special greetings to my colleagues and friends in the studio there. Happy New Year to all of us, and Happy New Year to Nigerians.
Happy New Year to you too. So let's start with you, Dr. Harry. Your assessment. Last year was a very dramatic year in the oil and gas sector. A lot of wars, they call the price war, is it crude war, imports, exports, or domestic refinery war. It was very dramatic, but I think the good thing that came out of last year, which I don't think anyone can deny, is the fact that at least we have a number connected to our domestic refinery. I don't think we've had that in a while. So let me first of all get your assessment of, the year in general. We'll do all of that, and then we'll now delve into the conversation. What's your assessment when you look at the happenings in the sector in 2025?
Well, thank you for your question. The thing is that we have a new entrant in the business, and that's very, very important. A very important entrant, the Dangote refinery, very great entry into the industry, and we are very proud of that. Obviously, the challenges that we face are teething problems that in any new scenario, in any business, we are going to expect will happen. So the back and forth, the breaker breaks, the war of words, price wars as it is, are very reluctant to call it the price war. Were all issues that I think we should address with equanimity and a mindset to solve the challenges that Nigerians face. So the year, by and large, was a great one because at the end of the day, what was important was that Nigerians did have petroleum product available. There was very healthy price evaluations. Were we happy with the ups and downs and very arbitrary price changes? The answer is no. But we are in the house, and we will deal with the situation as we grow.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's come to Mr. Eche. Mr. Eche, your assessment of the sector in 2025.
For us, 2025 was quite an interesting year. That ended on a very, very positive note for us in the refining segment. It was a bullish year for the downstream particularly. It was a year when Nigeria started taking its seat among the Committee of Nations when it comes to activities in the downstream. And like my friend, Mr. Harry has said, the activities of the local refineries, I would like to see, not just singling just Dangote had contributed greatly to this. Of course, with ramped up refining capacity in country, with the refiners taking the bull by the horn and controlling the market narratives. And then, of course, we cannot forget the role the government had played with its very audacious policies geared towards protecting and promoting local refining. We did saw a number of pushbacks from incumbents who would have wanted the old order to continue. Or in a whole, we saw the overall effect of these new developments as it ended up in ample supplies during the Yuletide and the very, very rare decline in price of petroleum products in the Yuletide, which was a departure from what it had to elsewhere, where at a time like this, what you would have seen would have been long queues, hike in price of petroleum products, and general chaos. I think in a whole, for us in the petroleum, in the midstream and the refining segment, it was a plus. And of course, we also saw successful activities even in the upstream, which directly impacts on us because we saw a couple of more marginal fields hitting production, and we've seen a sort of synergy between upstream players and us in the midstream and the downstream. So in a nutshell, I think last year, 2025 was a good year for the operators in the refining and downstream spectrum.
All right, another positive there. Let me come to petroleum, the NG. You followed the data, especially the depots and all. For you, 2025, was it a good, not so good year?
Yeah, for me, it was unprecedented, a great year. Dangote set the benchmark for pricing at $8.99 in January, and at the end of the year, it closed with $6.99. That's a 200 naira drop. That is significant. And looking at the fact that in the month of July, he had its first export to US. That is another milestone. And we also had the fact that he was a big buyer of crude, US crude, and it shows the deficiency in the upstream. He, as a major refiner in Nigeria, is supposed to have access to crude, and that is why we see the prices are still on the high. Prices in Nigeria should be more than 500 if he has been having access to crude, possibly in Naira. So I think 2025 has been a great year. We've had our controversies, the Nupeng, Pengasin, Darkman versus Dangote. We've had the 4,000
DPR drama towards the end of the year.
4,000 CNG trucks that it went viral, and the union strike and all of that. So it has been a great year. We've had great controversies.
It's not yet in 2026. It has been a great year. It was a great year.
It was. Yes,
Exactly.
it was a great year. Yeah, it was a great year, and it was able to create a balance in the downstream. And we understand that there was a new sheriff in town. The Dangote refinery came and disrupted the environment, making sure that the depot owners need to sit up. Yes, you don't have to make abnormal profits the way it used to be in the past. This time around, everyone needs to wear your thinking cap and see how to be innovative. So looking into 2026, I hope to see more collaboration between the depot owners and the Dangote refinery.
All right, Mr. Shomi.
Okay, thank you. I think from a more holistic perspective, the industry has grown. The industry has grown, first of all, from a capacity to be more effective in interactions. We need to understand that traditionally, over the decades, almost a century of oil and gas is a conservative industry. Most of what happens within the industry stays within the industry and all that. So there has been interruptions. Those interruptions has forced the new regulators to be more active than traditionally they should have been. That's a new. And what that means in its essence is that you have an industry that is going to be more responsive to the other aspects of society. Yes, people talk about downstream as being the whole thing, and that can be understood because that's where the rubber touches the road. Because if you ask any Nigerian today, the average man on the street, their understanding of us being an oil and gas country is downstream. However, the industry is a lot bigger than downstream.
Okay.
So let's move to midstream. One significant thing that happened that didn't even get attention at all was the crossing of the Niger of the AKK pipeline. The AKK pipeline has been there for over a decade. And at 3 different instances, they've had issues with crossing of the River Niger. There was a point when the iron cast midway, and before they could get replacement, there was but they successfully crossed it. And now, based on some things I heard some days ago, they are going to be offering gas facilities both to Kano. They are getting to Kano and to Kaduna. What that means is that the old industries, that's the textile industries, the Sharada estate, the Bompa estate in Kano, are going to be revived. That is huge by any stretch of imagination in terms of income, in terms of employment, in terms of GDP development. Those did not get mentioned, and understandably, just because of not the understanding. Then if you move to upstream, there's the part of licensing bids that are supposed to come in and all that. We are talking about hundreds and 200s of millions of dollars that is going to come into the country. So overall for the industry, it's been robust, it's been strategic, it's been huge. It is what we now expect to see is for the thing to distill to the lives and activities of everyone.
All right, so just before I yield the floor to Olu, some of those major things that happened in 2025, and I know Olu is going to drill in on all of this. First of all, we had the crude theft. The crude theft we saw, and metering losses. We saw that reduce to approximately 9,600 most part of 2025. I believe it was about 210,000 before then. Total volume loss between January and July was placed about 2.04 million barrels. Economic loss, however, of course, was still high. The calculation between 2001 and 2005, July, over 8 trillion naira. And then also, some of the things that happened was the total rig count last year. We heard a lot about government being active there. As at October the 2nd, it was 69 units, even though 40 of them were active as at the end of 2025. The NUPRC approved 43 new field development plans. That's one of Olu's favorite areas. And then crude production, we saw peaked at 1.7. And for the first time after a very long time, we hit the quota that OPEC gave us last year, even though later on it dropped a bit. But as at November ending, we saw daily production was at 1.599 million barrels. And of course, we have Dangote, that we've already mentioned, Mr. Latide mentioned that the export of refined products also as a major high points from the sector last year. And then, of course, this year, we do hope, you know, that all of this will join. Well, I learned that the only female who's supposed to be on this panel has joined us. And I mean, I would just say I am glad that we have you joining us, even though we had started the program of that. Fumi Ogbeshi, the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Zigma Gas Limited. Good morning, Fumi. Welcome to the program. Thank you for coming to my aid at this time.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
Yeah, okay, so I was just about to hand over to Olu, but Olu, just let's find out your assessment of the oil and gas sector in 2025.
Oh, the oil and gas sector in 2025 was very busy. For the first time, you know, in a long time, we had sort of started seeing the gains of the PIA. You know, the industry went through a long period of lull because, you know, once you announce that you're going to reform or change the terms of engagement, everybody waits. So for about maybe 10 to 20 years, there was very little investment and interest in the sector. And then the Petroleum Industry Act was born, signed, passed into law, and new regulatory agencies came on board. And then, you know, you began to slowly, cautiously see interest and investments. And I think you could see that at the peak of it in 2025. So, you know, reform that, you know, started many years ago was now, you know, you could see the benefits in 2025.
So I'll hand over to Olu at this time, Olu.
Well, I mean, I'm torn in between having to discuss the industry and the things that have happened. For me, I mean, we've been at several conferences all over the world and Nigeria trying to make their mark wherever we find that opportunity. But interestingly, like Bode said, as far as 2025 is concerned, let's not lose sight of the fact that the industry isn't just about the downstream, but like he said, that's the part that hits closer home in terms of consumption. But for the likes of Fumi, for instance, who play at the upstream level, midstream level, as it were, gas, we saw in 2025 a lot of big ticket investment and big ticket sign-ups. So we saw the Renaissance coming as a whole 100% Nigerian company, taking over from assets that were divested from Shell. And if you understand what that meant, I mean, for the viewers, I mean now, what used to be Shell, for instance, downstream technically, and it's not necessarily downstream, but what used to be Shell, you know, onshore, has effectively been taken over by a Nigerian company. They're running that, they've started running that, and trying to make that as effective as it could. One of the big tickets also that we saw last year was that of Seplat acquiring Mobil's onshore assets, and that was a huge investment that was on the table for almost 2 or 3 years, as it were. But last year, we saw hands across the desk and hands across the table. Eventually, Seplat acquired that. We saw big investments coming from Shell offshore, as it were. And those are huge mega investments that almost want to make the downstream business a child's play in terms of investment. So it's important that we see that, because that's the model that feeds all of the other parts of the industry. It feeds the midstream, it feeds the downstream. Talking about marginal fields, I think in 2020, when the licenses were open, about 54 people, Fumi, I think, got some or something like that. About 54 companies were licensed to go into the marginal fields to produce crude oil. And eventually, we have a Nigerian success. We have a Nigerian success story. A Nigerian company investing over $100 million of their own money, and not necessarily before they even went to the banks. And the other part of the financing came from a Nigerian bank, $25 million, coming from a Nigerian bank, single bank. And today we have a first oil. They are doing almost their 3rd shipment, pushing oil. And I think the first oil has hit China, as it were. So we saw a shift, complete shift from what used to happen in Nigeria in terms of the industry, where the big companies are now actually have left the onshore businesses, mid businesses, as it were, in terms of marginal fuels. And Nigerians are producing, MRDEB has produced its first oil, doing the third shipment and all of that. So I understand the sentiments around the downstream and petroleum price. That's really, really the least of the kind of investment and the growth that the industry has witnessed. We saw a lot of gas signings too. Fumi is into gas. I don't know what kind of partnerships they're having. I know in about 3-4 weeks from now, there'll be a huge conference happening in Abuja where all the convergence of industry people will be at. But 4 or 5 years before now, what used to happen is that Nigerians just used to attend and participate in those conferences. We didn't have much to do. But think about it last year, October, in Cape Town. We're all in Cape Town and saw what happened in Nigeria was big. We had 2 of our ministers. We had Nigerian businesses cutting deals. And it took its dressing from like him, hate him, from presidential directive of Trump saying, drill, baby, drill. So Africans are now beginning to come up. Namibia is coming up, the Namibian basin is coming up, Cameroon is doing something, a lot of those countries along the Gulf of Guinea is doing something, Ghana is surging on very strongly, South Africa is surging on very strongly, and Angola, the regular, all of the Angolas of this world and all of that are coming up very strongly. So Africa is becoming a very thick hub of investment and activities in terms of oil and gas, energy, and business, as it were. So you see, there's that crisscrossing that's happening across Africa, and that's what we need to pay attention to. And like Fumi said, it's all dovetailing from that singular act, Petroleum Industry Act, that's now a law.
All right, Olu, I can see this is your area of passion, so you're more of a guest now. You're not my co-presenter. I cancel that. You're no longer my
I just wanted to even add...
You're more of
Fumi's trying to say something.
All right, yeah, Fumi is saying.
Yeah, I wanted to add to what Olu was saying, that in addition to MRDEB, you probably have about another 5 or 6 Nigerian companies that have started production. So you see that Nigerians are playing in the upstream space very actively. But I think beyond Nigerians playing, it's the role that government is playing that I think it's quite important. I mean, this is something that I've advocated for a long time. And I can see it happening. Government is beginning to professionalize their involvement in the oil and gas industry. So you will see that regulators and the team that the president appointed in NNPC are industry people. So they're professionals. And they provide that certainty and regulatory stability that the industry needs. So that's why you see that Nigerians are playing, but even the foreigners that are coming and are playing in the deep water and the offshore space, you see that they are bringing more investments and production is growing. I just want to encourage that continues in 2026 because it's very important. People don't want business as usual. I don't know much about downstream, but what I see happening with the Dangote refinery, I feel is a game changer and must just be encouraged to continue to happen so that we have the same stability that we have or that we're seeing in the upstream happen all the way from through midstream and downstream.
All right, for me, thank you so much. Let me come to Dr. Billy Harris. Dr. Harris, I know you've been listening in, and you said you have to leave soon, so let's just get your thoughts on a whole lot of things. Fumi there talked about government's involvement and the involvement now being professional and bringing a level of certainty. And of course, we know that last year, 2025, was a defining year for the industry. When you look at government's involvement and the issue of certainty for operators, especially the domestic operators or the local operators, what do you see? What do you expect? What do you think the government should be doing at this time?
Well, let me congratulate Fumi and MRDEB and the rest of the Nigerian companies that have ventured into the upstream space and are doing very well. Congratulations to them. Government's role clearly is very positive and has really been very instrumental to even all of these actors and players on the play now. we will expect the government to continue to make way for Nigerian players to be there, encourage them. The most critical is sourcing for funds, because that is just one of the critical issues that is slowing down Nigerians. Nigerians are very hardworking, very innovative, and very creative to ensure that we run our industry and give Nigeria the best of the oil and gas, economy. So what I will expect government to do, especially now we have a very, very astute industry player, Mrs. Eyasan, as the NUPRIC CCE, and also in the downstream we have Alhaji Saidu. These are very seasoned professionals that we believe will work very closely with Nigerian entrepreneurs to ensure that the business of doing oil and gas in Nigeria grows. The issue about making the energy bank, actually Energy Bank of Nigeria, not just Energy Bank, because the Energy Bank that we're talking about now is Energy Bank for Africa. We need to be specific about our country and give all the necessary support to industry players to be able to achieve their greatest, potential. I think that's what the government should do. And then, of course, more clear interpretations on what the PIA, dishes out. Obviously, it's a document that is needing to be given life. And I think that professionals, like most of the people we have on this program now, are very, very competent professionals that should be invited with the government to at all times interpret and judge on the provisions of the PIA to be able to help Nigerian businesses and domestic business to grow. Again, we want to congratulate Dangote Refinery for the effort they've made. We're expecting Azikiwe Refinery to come on stream from Bayelsa. We're expecting Bua to come on stream. Azikiwe is almost ready from the information that we got. And other modular refineries are also working. Hopefully, we're going to work to increase their performance to be able to introduce PMS, production also out of some of these refineries by expanding their space and getting the necessary equipment that's required to blend PMS. So other than that, I think this year 2026, we believe that the government should be encouraged to work more with us and encourage every one of us to optimize our potentials. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Billy Gillies Harry. Dr. Harry says he has to get off somewhere, and so thank you so much for being a part of the program and bringing the perspective of Petron, and of course, we'll be following up with you on expectations for 2026.
Thank you.
All right, Olu, over to you.
So I was going to come quickly to Fumi. She happened to be the only upstream person here, as it were. I know that, but they might be able to oscillate between upstream, downstream, and midstream, as it were. And our analyst here on pricing might just be able to talk a bit about just downstream. So let me come to Fumi. Fumi, we have a 10 years plan, for instance. That's what the federal government has projected in terms of the decade of gas. And I think we are a few years into it, and in the last 2 years, the campaign has been for just transition. So we're moving away from all of the conversations around whether hydrocarbon should be suspended, as it were. Of course, we know that's the heart of drilling, as it were. Now, but today, we are talking about just transition. Billy just talked about the Energy Bank. Well, I don't see it as a Nigerian bank. It's not a Nigerian bank, though Nigeria has done a lot to have it domiciled here in Nigeria. But the Energy Bank was also set up to help all of these investments, both in upstream and midstream. For you, are we justly, if I use that word loosely, still pursuing the decade of gas agenda? And what might you think we could tweak as far as that just transition is concerned, gas is concerned? Government is paying so much emphasis on gas, and of course you know what LNG is doing. They want more gas so that their Train 7 can also function effectively, and some of you are the players. What do you have to say to this?
Oh, I think that the decade of gas has, to a large extent, sat on paper. But I'm told, last year, towards the end of last year, that NNPC was finalizing the gas development plan, the master's plan, so to speak, that will be able to provide the framework to fund gas developments more aggressively. Because today, to be honest, if you really want to do a large-scale gas project, you can't find upstream gas. Because gas is intentionally developed. So I think once that plan is rolled out and they start to work it, then we would be able to see, decade of gas actually becoming a reality. So that's on the NNPC side, because as you know, they're the biggest developer of oil and gas in the country. So once an NNPC puts pen to paper and put money to that paper around gas development, we will begin to see more gas projects sanctioned. Additionally, if you recall last year, Shell also sanctioned their gas project, and I think also Total with Ubita project is to develop upstream gas. So those two projects, you sort of saw them on the private sector. I think with SEPNU as well, because everybody knows Seplat is really a gas company. So with the acquisition of the Exxon assets and SEPNU coming out of it, I believe that we will see a lot of gas development, because those assets are very gas rich. The particular asset that I'm involved with on the gas side is the Antan, which is former ADAX. I'm yet to see firm development plans there, but those assets, that's OML 123, 124, are also very gas-rich assets. So as we have clarity around from the NNPC around what they want to do with Antan, and they begin to develop and drill on those assets, then I think there will also be sort of firm development around gas. So to your point, so far it's been on paper. We see strong signs, at least from the NNPC side, that is coming to life with their gas development plans. And on the private sector side, there's projects being sanctioned, and hope that with Seplat coming now with the acquisition of ExxonMobil assets, that there will be a lot of gas development. Because gas is something that will, they always say Nigeria is a gas province with an oil rim. So we have a lot more gas than we have oil, but it has to be intentionally developed. And I don't really see Nigerian banks, being able to really play in the oil and gas industry without reform in that sector. So I think it's something that the central bank and the Ministry of Finance need to look at with intentionality, is what percentage of our revenue, because this thing where they're sharing money for national development across all the states, it doesn't really help. So I think there needs to be some reform where they say, before we share, we're going to leave, for example, 30% of all the money that we earn and use it for further developments in the sector.
Permit me to interject and say that you're already calling for, which a lot of people are also calling for reforms around the Petroleum Industry Act. Yes, we see that coming. There's been a lot of activity
on the fiscal side.
On the fiscal side, and also on the fiscal side, yes. So, for instance, the NUPRC. I'm coming to Bode, for instance, now to talk about some of the other issues on the fiscal side and on the enabling side, which Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission. We have a professional there now, Mrs. Eyesa, very astute. As enablers, hold that thought. I'm going to ask this question, but hold that thought. As enablers,
because you have to remember that NNPC is going through some sort of divestment. So I'm imagining that will also free up some cash. Brilliant. But I'm thinking that at a national level, we need to invest a lot more of our money in the oil and gas industry.
All right. Let me get an intervention from Olabode on this.
Okay, so I wanted to first of all offer a perspective on the decade of gas, because I also do some work with them. The decade of gas, I think one of their own challenges really is being visible in terms of the things that they're doing. And of course, because of the nature of the industry, there are certain things that they may want to take their time on. So for perspective, when the whole idea of national development for gas came in, there were 4 priority areas: gas-based industries, gas to industries, and gas to power, and then of course LPG. Now,
but sorry, I understand what you're trying to say.
Yes,
but it all starts with this gas development at the midstream level. If it's not happening like Fumi is saying,
so let me just
then
run
the
through my
activities
thoughts.
are also stunted.
So let me run through my thoughts. So 75% of domestic gas goes to gas to power.
Yeah.
And because of the illiquidity in the power sector, it is dysfunctional. So technically, domestic gas will technically be useless without having a way to run through effectiveness within the gas to power sector. I think that's one area that the decade of gas has come in. The interventions that came in through the special advisor on power and some of the activities that there. So there is some activities within the decade of gas, which is a bit more than saying that they're on paper, but that's just on the one side of it. The other side, in terms of when we look at what has happened within the midstream level, like I said, with the AKK, there are 3 critical things that it's supposed to affect on the long term. One is the Trans-Sahara, because it's the feed pipe into the Trans-Sahara project. The second part is that there are 3 power projects, major power projects in Abuja, in Kaduna, and in Kano, that the AKK is to feed. That's aside the industries that it will directly feed. The third part is the supporting states that are connected with it. You're talking about Benue, you're talking about Niger and Co., who have an opportunity to develop a pipe into those places and feedstock into them. So in terms of development and
infrastructure, that's what you're discussing now.
Yes.
This is infrastructure.
Yes.
But we're looking at the feedstock, for instance. But it's so much to unpack. So let me come to...
So we now come to the investment part.
Yes.
Now, one of the reasons why there has been limitations in investment has been the posture globally, which, like you said, Trump changed. But however, there were some exceptions which we may not have chased because of the nature of who we traditionally deal with. I mean, we are traditionally either UK or US, but there are some other oil countries. There is Norway, there is Russia and all that. We don't traditionally have interactions with those people. And there are financial institutions and financial systems there which had been active, but maybe not as active as what we are used to.
You know how they say it.
Disruptions is not just in the downstream.
Yes.
There's also a need for disruption within our understanding of fiscal.
I was going to say that because, I mean, you know, they say money is shy, it goes to where it is appreciated. So you have those financial institutions out there, but you need to get your fiscals right so they can bring investment there. So I'm going to come quickly to our Abuja guest, Koran. Koran, you guys have... I dare say you have bore the pain of the downstream lately, and some of your members. A lot of people didn't know that there are other refiners other than the big one we have out there in the outskirts of Lagos. So for your members, for instance, I see that there's a little squabble between what you understand as the rules of the downstream in terms of how it favors domestic supply, domestic refining, cash for Naira for crude, obligations, and, you know, also the challenge of the fact that it is said that some of your locations are far-flung from where the assets are. Where in all of this do you think we should bring a conversation around to a nexus where domestic refining can actually be that disruption that is needed eventually in the downstream sector? Koran.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. In terms of, I want to take you first on what the nexus between what's happening in the upstream and what's happening in the downstream. You see, when we see increased investments in the upstream, it excites us in the downstream because when local refineries came upstream and it became a reality with Dangote entering the fray and other modular refineries ramping up their capacity, it became obvious that one of the major challenges that we're going to have was going to be sufficient feedstock. And that conversation has been on ground for a very long time. And this is why that's why we're playing a very pivotal role, and we've been very, very vocal in the campaign to reform the PIA. We are trying to see how we can get more, get the PIA to to dwell more or make provisions that address the challenges of local refining like they are done with the gas. If you look at the PIA made very, very specific pronouncements and provisions for the gas sector, and most of the provisions for the local refining segment were more generic. We had spoken about how there was provision for the domestic crude supply, but then the enforcement was neither here nor there. So we are excited when we see activities happening in the upstream, and I wanted to add that, just like you mentioned in your opening statement, that what actually happens in the upstream directly affects what happens to us in the down and the midstream. And then to the question that you have asked, there are quite a number of issues for us that we think needs to be gotten right for the local refinery to begin to deliver in full potential the dividends that it has to bring. One of those that has been overflowed is sufficiency of crude. We have always asked that we should have adequate feedstock supply. The argument has always been,
can I interrupt you? Can I interrupt you there?
Free market, and there are crude.
Let me interrupt you quickly, and I want you to answer this in quick seconds, so that, because we're running out of time, and I want you to do this in like 45 seconds. The issue around crude supply, is it a fiat thing? Is it a negotiation thing? Is it a business model? Is it a sales agreement issue or something else?
Actually, it's actually a combination of a business model and commercial issue. What we have always been saying with crude supply is that you should make crude available at a fair and transparent term.
All right.
The terms right now, as it were, for which crude is being supplied for us in local refineries in Nigeria, we think is not fair, because it has not mirrored the peculiar circumstances of Nigeria. So we want fair pricing. Okay. We want transparency in the pricing template. Okay. And then we want availability in the availability and some form of firmness in terms of the regulatory oversight in the supply of crude.
Thank you very much. Well, also do bear in mind that as you discussed that, it's a business of willing buyer, willing seller. The producer will take his products to where he deems fit, and how it's a private business. Anyway, but all of that can come under some kind of talk. But let me bring that to you. Same vein, I mean, finally, in same vein of what he's discussing, you can have those rights pricing if these guys are still struggling to get crude. Perhaps their financial areas are not, their sales agreements are not well put together, because these oil companies that produce say, you don't bring, I can't just bring them to you. Let's have a talk.
Okay, for me, I think that there is a direct connection between the upstream and the downstream. And the reason why we still have prices at this high level is because we have limited supply from the upstream.
And not international price?
Yeah.
And not international pricing?
Well,
which is the major thing?
Yes. Quite frankly, yes. But looking at the fact that currently international prices, FX doesn't determine prices at the moment. The local intricacies, the market forces, the Dangote forces determines prices as we speak.
There's always never enough time to discuss some of these things. I'm going to toss it back to the owner of this show.
Well, thank God it's just the beginning of the year. That means we have a lot of opportunity to have these conversations. And I'll always reach out to you, and I hope that you'll be available. Not to you, Olu. So anyways, the program is far-stretched, but thank you so much for being a part of it. I'd like to thank our guests. Of course, we had Dr. Gillies Harry, who had to drop off the program because he had some other obligations from Petron. Right here in the studio, we have energy analyst, Mr. Olabode Showumi. Thank you so much for your time. Mr. Olatide, my usual customer. Thank you for the info. Olu, I'll see you outside the camera.
And Fumi. Fumi's out there.
Fumi, yes. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. My friend, I'm sorry. You're the one who balanced this conversation. Thank you so much, Fumi Ogbe, for joining us and for sharing your views. I'll certainly reach out to you in the course of the year to talk. And of course, we have from our Abuja studio, Mr. Idoko also. The crude people, they've already started causing trouble this early January. Koran and the Petran. But that's a conversation for another day. Thank you so much, Mr. Iche Idoko, for your time on the program.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so just before we go, I have to tell you that the NGX is on fire. We are back on track. We have a green market in early trade. We'll give you the details. Downstream Business Incorporated. Ladi Williams will be here. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Thank you so much for being a part of it.